For over 50 years, the Nobel Conference at Gustavus Adolphus College has hosted preeminent scientists, theologians, and ethicists to discuss questions at the intersection of science and society. From the newest results in physics, chemistry, and biology to the newest fields of multidisciplinary study, scientists at the Nobel Conference have examined the universe at its largest and smallest scales, explored the oceans, described new materials, and investigated human and animal behavior. Conference speakers have debated the mechanisms of aging as well as the science and economics of food. Often, speakers have given us a glimpse of the next defining questions and how they might be answered. Throughout all of the conversations, ethicists and theologians have grounded the science in a human dimension. This year's conference focuses on addiction, a uniquely human condition. The 51st Nobel Conference, Addiction, Exploring the Science and Experience of an Equal Opportunity Condition, brings together experts in medicine, neuroscience, sociology, and philosophy to explore the science and experience of addiction. The conference explores a range of questions. What does it mean to be addicted? Is it a brain condition, a psychological disorder, a sociological problem? The answers to these questions raise a very important one. What treatment options are available? We hope you enjoy this year's presentation by Sheigla Murphy entitled Understanding Prescription Drug Misuse from a Sociological Perspective. Sheigla B. Murphy is the director of the Center for Substance Abuse Studies at the Institute for Scientific Analysis in San Francisco, California, and is a prominent medical sociologist who has been researching various types and aspects of illicit drug use for more than 30 years. She has been the principal investigator and director of numerous research grants, which have concentrated on the qualitative study of social substance abuse. While much of her research has been focused on age-specific substance abuse, Dr. Murphy has also dedicated research to understanding substance abuse in women and its effects on pregnancy.
Okay, hi everybody. I can barely see you. Okay, let me start out by saying thank you. President Bergman, faculty and fellow participants, Scott Burr and Peg O'Connor. I want to thank all of them for putting on this incredible conference. I haven't been to anything much like this, and I think we should do this in other places and more often. I also want to thank my student wranglers who have guided me through. Would you like the notes up here? Yeah, that would work for me. I need all the help I can get. Okay, perfect. Okay, so they've guided me through figuring out where to go and where to be and how to get there, and have taken such good care of me. Andrea Garcia and Rachel Hain, thank you so much. I also hear that there's high schoolers in the audience. Is that true? Do we have high schoolers? Okay, so I'm going to speak to you guys at the end. I have something special for you. So listen all the way through to get your present at the end. Oh, you want me to stand by the microphone? Okay. All right. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the non-medical use of prescription drugs. And I'm going to start, excuse me, I'm sorry, by talking to you about how people initiate to using drugs. That is, how folks get started. And then I'm also going to talk to you about this concept of social supply, which originated in the UK, and basically it asks the question, when friends supply or facilitate supply to friends, is that really dealing? And as we'll see, that has real implications for drug policy. Okay. So that's and then if I don't go on too long and get it, and we'll talk a little bit about whiteness. Whiteness as a social identity, as an ethnic identity, and how that colors everything we're going to talk about today. So let's start by defining non-medical prescription use. It's the use, our definition for this research project is the use of prescription drugs, prescribed or not, to get high for the experiences they cause, to enhance school or work performance, or to modify the effects of other drugs or alcohol. So we're going to talk about two studies today. The first one is a NIDA-funded study on the non-medical use of prescription drugs. As you can see, these are very small samples. Mostly, here's the demographics from the first study. The majority of the largest group of participants were white. There were an equal number of men and women. The median age was 21. And the top three drugs used were Vicodin, Xanax, followed by Adderall and oxycodone. And then the next study, where we looked more specifically at non-medical prescription stimulant use and spread the age range out. Here are the demographics for that study. Non-medical prescription stimulant study, again, the largest groups were white. There are more men than women. The median age was 30. And the top three prescription stimulants used were Adderall, Ritalin or Concerta, and Dexedrine. I use the brand names for these drugs. Wish I could see you better. I use the brand names for these drugs because those are the names we know. Okay. So for most of my work, we've done used ethnographic and chain referral methods to locate our participants. We do life history interviews, face-to-face interviews with folks, which I find to be very illuminating in understanding how people use drugs, why they use drugs, and the consequences of their use. We screen persons over the telephone to determine their eligibility, and then when they get there and we find out they're not eligible, we pay them and let them go and go on to another person. Participants will have used, to be in the study to qualify, they have used prescription drugs non-medically for 6 times during the 12 months prior to interview. This, at the time we started this project, prescription drug use was a fairly new phenomenon on the public radar. Certainly people have used prescription drugs non-medically for a very long time. So that we set the criteria in order to include new users along with those that were more habituated. So we used both in-depth interviews and questionnaires. We asked about early life, school employment, medical histories, prescription and other drug use, social lives, impact of drug use on lifestyle, health, and relationship. And we analyzed the data using grounded theory methods. The notion being that the themes that are important, and this is very important, from the perspective of the drug user. That's who's centered in this project. We see them as our primary source of information. We believe that they have a perspective that's important for us to understand about their use, about their lives. And we also believe that this information, along with certainly other kinds of information that are available from different ways of looking at this project, helps us to develop better interventions or to learn when we don't need to intervene. So the initiation to prescription drug use, the themes that emerged from our interview data were the exposure, motivation, access, and setting. Okay. So, but first let me talk a little bit about our theoretical framework. And I think this is very important to always understand people's theoretical framework when you're evaluating their research projects. We start with Zinberg's drug set and setting, and for those of you who study drugs, this will be really boring, but those that don't, basically what that model allows. And actually, high school students, think about this the way I'm talking about evaluating drug experiences for your own personal life. So basically looking at the drug is looking at how the drug works, what people believe about the drug, and the actual pharmacological actions of the drug. The set refers to what people bring to the experience. We all come to our various experiences with memories, personalities, mental illnesses, all the things that make us who we are and bring us to the precipice of using drugs. Or either the precipice or a very long road could go a long way. And then the setting, which I've actually been talking about a lot since I've been here, which is where the drug is used, both on a micro sense, is like who you're with when you're using the drug, and also in a more macro sense, in that what are the social and cultural attitudes at that historical moment towards that particular kind of drug use. So in my way of thinking, and certainly Dr. Zinberg's, the way to think about or begin to understand or to study drug experiences is to take into account all three of these aspects. And high schoolers and people thinking about using drugs, it's a good way for you to sort of organize your own thoughts about drug use. Then the other part of the framework we used is particularly looking at the initiation piece was social learning theory. We use it to help understand how deviant behaviors, such as drug use, are learned and imitated. And the components of the theory most relevant to our discussion are differential association and imitation. There's another spider. Good God, get out. Is it just the women that are getting attacked by the spiders? Is this a gender issue? Denise, what do you think? Okay. So we have different association that values, attitudes, techniques, and motives of deviant behavior are learned through interactions with others. You learn how to be bad. You also learn how to be good. You learn everything, from my perspective, in our interactions with others. And the probability that someone will imitate and engage in deviant behavior increases when they associate those who model it. That's one of those findings, I think. Okay, so like with other drugs, most previous studies of initiation prove it to be a social process. There's a classic article in Sociological literature by Howard Becker called Becoming a Marijuana User. It's very difficult to become a marijuana user in isolation. You don't know the technology, you don't know how to do it, and that people, and because marijuana, the drug, because marijuana is a very subtle experience, someone almost has to tell you that you're high the first time that you use it. So it's a very social process, and so is non-medical use of prescription drugs. It involves other people teach you about how to do it, or they model it. Another thing high schoolers should do, before you're going to use a drug, be around other people that have used it and observe them and see if perhaps that's something you do not or do want to do. So it is a social process. But the big difference that we found with the prescription drug users was they had a sense that it was safer. And it became part of their rationale for continuing to use, was these are safe drugs. These drugs, compared to street drugs, because they prescribe them to children. These drugs have been made by pharmaceutical companies. They have been FDA approved, made in labs. Clean, with the words we heard a lot, were clean and safe. Obviously, some of these people were not aware of the terrible outcomes of some of the drugs that have been widely prescribed. Like Celebrex is a good example of one that is supposedly safe, and we find out was not safe at all. Okay, So interviewees expressed different motives and manners of initiation. Again, they brought their own set of beliefs and attitudes, and it was the interaction of their set and setting that led. So once you are in a setting where the drug is available, you have the interest, the curiosity to begin to use it, and those two things interact to make for your initiation. Okay. So this title is what we call an in vivo code. Everybody's doing it. And it means that that particular expression was found in our interviews, and it really described what a lot of people told us about prescription drug use. There was certainly, we're exposed to prescription drug use at different life stages and different various situations. We in fact included the oldest part of the sample, the 45 and up, because we had read widely that there were older adults that were seeking ADHD prescriptions because they wanted access to the drug effects, which are can increase focus and wakefulness, so that older folks who have a hard time staying awake for parties and stuff, or find themselves they need some help in focusing at work, we're seeking out these prescriptions, so that's why we included them. So the three main modes for exposure were through parents, friends and peers, and in their neighborhoods. And I think that is again where prescription drug use is different, is people's sources for these drugs were sometimes their parents or their parents' medicine cabinets. In fact, there was a very interesting public service announcement where a few years ago that showed a guy that looked like he might be a drug dealer saying his business was down because of the fact that people could get the drugs they needed right out of their parents' medicine cabinets. And again, this increases people's sense of safety. You know, we had people telling us that their parents gave them some of these drugs when they were in pain or when they needed to stay awake or focus for school. So that's a very different relationship, of family relationship in terms of drug use. And certainly the nature of their exposure contributed to their set and made an impression on their expectations and motivation. So now motivation. Curiosity. You know, curiosity killed the cat, but certainly it's very easy to understand why people would be, particularly young people, would be curious about drugs. Aren't these great pictures, by the way? I just love them. And the curiosity is something that we try and foster in young people, but if they get curious about the wrong things, we kind of spank them down. So the curiosity, the notion that I can be in I have one sort of frame of mind, and then I just take a pill, and I'm in another frame of mind is pretty interesting and compelling. The other motivation, performance enhancement, is a little different than other street drugs. People don't talk about using heroin to do better on their SATs, or using, although cocaine, that's a little different, but or using, cocaine to work harder. The problem with cocaine is that you have to administer so often that you end up administering cocaine and not getting much work done. But these drugs, particularly the stimulant drugs, are very interesting in terms of setting issues as well. Because the notion that you're using drugs to work harder, study harder, perform better, fits into our American ideal of the Protestant work ethic. I'm not doing this to get high. This isn't hedonistic behavior. This is for me to do better in work and school. And then, of course, with any kind of what might be called off-label drug use, self-medication is a big motivator. People find that the drug helps them with whatever their difficulties are, mental or physical, and they begin to use the drugs for those reasons. And again, both the self-medication is certainly a very common motivator for all kinds of other kinds of drugs. But performance enhancement is a little different. And then the access. This is where whiteness comes in. Because people who are wealthier, have more resources, have more opportunities to go to the doctor and get prescriptions. In fact, we interviewed people who had scripts, I mean actual like TV scripts, where they had created to help each other go to the doctor and talk the doctor into giving them the drugs that they wanted, which is also a little different than other drugs. Doctors don't have cocaine and heroin, and if they did, they wouldn't give very many people any of it. So anyway, all right. So the other power of prescription is very important. Then access to student health centers. I mean, who gets to go to the student health center but somebody who's in college, not something that's available to every American. And certainly friends' prescriptions. There was much prescription trading going on. In fact, a real common story for the folks that came to stimulant use, particularly with through ADHD diagnosis and treatment, was that it was usually the young boys. They got diagnosed in grammar school. They were given prescription stimulants, usually, and they hated it. They didn't like the way it made them feel. They talked about having stimulant-free vacations. Their parents would let them not take their ADHD medication during the summer, so when they were not in school. But then they got to college, and they realized that other students wanted these drugs. So they became very big sources for prescriptions, and in a pretty easy and safe way for people to get the drugs that they were interested in. Then family sharing, we talked about that a little bit before, where parents actually went to doctors who were their friends and got their kids prescriptions so they could take ADHD medication to take to study for school or to take SAT tests. And there's one of the analyses we're doing is looking at how much the whole issue with steroids in sports, and that the notion that perhaps that's an unfair advantage, and this use of ADHD medications on college campuses. And I read this morning on the newsletter on my phone that there's a little Adderall use going on around here. That evidently you had a survey in which students talked about how beneficial ADHD medications were for focus. And for initiates, it's very uncommon to buy drugs on the street. They don't, although they are available, but that doesn't happen so often. So again, where are people using these drugs? High school campuses, college dorms, social gatherings and parties, and certainly workplaces, which is not down here. I'm not sure why. Swing shift workers are classically folks that get involved with ADHD type medications. So most studies of initiation, heroin, cocaine, ecstasy, and methamphetamine have found initiation to be a social process. I mean, it has to be, because you have to interact with somebody to get these drugs that are not legally available to you. Difference with prescription drug use is perception of safety and this issue of social responsibility. This notion that These aren't for fun. I'm doing this for a higher purpose. To the major themes are exposure, access, motivation, and setting. And interventions need to take into consideration this myth of safety. And I didn't go into that too much, but once you start buying these pills on the street, they're not so safe. And certainly when you take some of these medications in combination with other medications that you might be prescribed, you could get into some trouble with drugs. Now, one of the things that's one of the high-risk points of using illegal drugs is getting them, purchasing them. That's the place where you're most likely to come in contact with the police. That's the place where you're most likely to come into conflict with other folks over drugs and drug use. The social supply notion is that, wait, I lost my place here. Okay. The social supply asks, so how and where did users obtain prescription drugs? More often than not, participants utilize the social supply of prescription drugs relying on friendship networks to sort out drugs. Some major factors driving users to operate within social supply networks were reciprocity, social profit, advocacy, brokering, and the legality of doctor-dealers. So, reciprocity. Now here's another place where social location comes in. When you look at this quote from one of our respondents, he tells us it's kind of like when you go out to lunch with other people. There's no money exchange, but one time I get this lunch, the next time you get it. And it made people feel like it was less illegal or bad because you weren't paying for it. It's also part of how you get arrested for drug use is having both money and drugs on you when the police intervene. Excuse me. This is a class thing. Having enough money to reciprocate or engage in that kind of interaction is definitely something that is attached to more middle class kinds of not values, but resources. And then, so again, this reciprocity where you can cook somebody dinner or you can buy them lunch and because you have enough resources to do such things. And then there's the notion of social profit, exchanging things for social benefits, to gain access to certain people or networks of people as a social lubricant. So the idea of the ideas of reciprocity in social networks also applies to expectations of social profits in return for supplying prescription stimulants. Social profit is exchanging things not for mutual benefit, but for one's own social benefit. Some suppliers share stimulants for free to gain access to certain groups, social networks, or individuals. Others may use drug sharing as a social lubricant or as a way to connect, bond, or form relationships with other prescription drug users. And then there was this role of advocacy, which was very interesting. Advocacy, or sharing prescription drugs to promote the physical, emotional, and social well-being of others. Some drug suppliers took an advocate stance and were motivated to share prescription stimulants by the notion that some drugs could have positive impacts on the physical, emotional, and social well-being of people they know. Somebody would need to study for an exam. Somebody would need to code all night at work. These folks would help their friends out by giving them these prescription stimulants. So they'd share their stimulants usually to help enhance other users' work or school, or to help other users self-medicate for various issues. For example, offering a friend a prescription stimulant to ace their finals, or limiting the amount of pills one provides to their friends to prevent their overuse. So that we even had some policing going on, where people said, no, I'm not giving you any more of these drugs because you're using too much. Brokering, and this actually comes from Ross Coomber's work on social supply, is acting as a buffer between users and the larger drug market. For some users, brokers and social supply networks help to shield them from the risk of taking part in larger drug markets, which particularly for young people is important because not only do they are protected from arrest, but also from exposure to other drugs that they may not be interested in, which is a whole nother discussion about separate drug markets that I think is really important. Some prescription stimulant users act as brokers between people within their social networks and their own sources for prescription stimulants. Some of these brokers may have been motivated by capital gain, but many sought to help friends gain access to the drugs to which they had access themselves. These situations tended to take place in social settings when brokers and suppliers were also using the prescription stimulants with the people to whom they supplied the stimulants. Many participants chose to avoid buying from street sources to uphold the social supply buffer between their own use and public street markets. So you see our responses saying, I wouldn't buy from anybody else, I might get caught by the police. You got to stand on that corner for so long until somebody gives you the right deal. Adderall is not as popular. It was interesting though, the pill sellers that we interviewed talked about they'd look for the skinny guys and they'd approach them and ask them if they wanted some stimulants. So then there's the doctor dealers and doctor shopping, or teaching others which doctors will prescribe, how to talk to doctors, what symptoms to report, and key words to use, etc. So in a sense, doctors were seen as legal drug dealers. And our work also underlined the trend of suppliers diverting legitimately prescribed stimulants to friends or people they knew. Many participants discussed the ease with which they were able to obtain prescription stimulants from doctors or from people who had prescriptions. In such discussions, participants referred to doctors as legal drug dealers, again, another legal code, that would prescribe anything. Some participants engaged in doctor shopping. It's a little more difficult these days, or teaching others within supply networks, which doctors to seek, how to talk, what symptoms. Because doctors provide access to legally prescribed drugs, participants who learn how to doctor shop from others in their social supply networks felt, again, protected from the legal risks of street purchases. So, social supply. Relying on social supply networks to sort out drugs between friends is a form of harm reduction, in that staying away from street sellers reduces the risks of legal repercussions, limits exposure to other drugs, and provides access directly or indirectly to product safety and health warning provided with legally prescribed drugs. Okay, so a lot of what makes prescription drugs different is not just that it's mainly white people that are using it. It's the fact that the public perception is that it's a white problem, and therefore we see very different kinds of sort of attitudes, sympathy, maybe a little empathy, and different proffered interventions and solutions. So we see prescription drug users stereotyped as rich white kids, perceptions of the drug market, all the black guys sell pills to white guys, and then, of course, it's much harder to get arrested if you're white. If you've got money and if you're white, it really helps a lot. You can get through the system and do okay, and if you don't, you can't. It's real prejudice that way. And that was echoed in a lot of the interviews. And the combination of prescription drugs being perceived as a white middle-class problem and the sense that somehow these pharmaceutical drugs are safer and not as problematic and we don't really know if that's true, has really shaped the public discourse about prescription drugs and what we should do about it. One example I think that's really important, I like to move around, this mic's not letting me, but one example that's I think really important is naloxone, okay? Naloxone's been around for about 50 years, and I don't know if you know about what it is, but it's a rescue drug for opiate overdose. And at least 25 years ago, I helped start a project in San Francisco trying to get naloxone prescribed or available to anybody who was injecting opiates. It seemed to me like a no-brainer. You could bring people back. I could do it. Just hit them with the EpiPen in their Levi's, and they're back. Now, those programs never really got off the ground. Now, with the upsurge in both adult and young people's use of street opiates, and the fact that the news accounts are portraying them as largely white people, we see a proliferation of naloxone. There's programs all over the place. In San Francisco, the police carry it on them. And there's movements now to get the naloxone to, when people are long-term opiate pain reliever users, to have them have that in their homes. It's a difference. It's a difference in our response. We move more towards harm reduction. It becomes more of a public health issue when the social location of the perceived social location of the drug user is white and middle class. So, and again, this notion that all the black guys sell their pills to white guys come from the suburbs. This is one of the African American males talking about how people get drugs. In contrast, this participant depicted his prescription stimulant use as a well-off Caucasian male from a wealthy neighborhood. Like a yuppie-ish type dude, and kind of like one of those Marina type guys. Marina is a very upscale neighborhood in San Francisco. They're kind of annoying, but seem to have a good supply. Yeah, Caucasians. Okay. And then, I don't really think I need to, with all that's been in the press about mass incarceration, about disparities in who's in jail and who gets arrested and how long they stay and how long their sentences are, that we know that white privilege protects many folks from having to go to the criminal justice system. Okay, so I promised I had a message for the high schoolers, and this is my message. You get a lot of time to use drugs. Drugs aren't going to go away. And the people that will provide them to you, they're not going anywhere either. So take your time. They're always out there. But if you're like me, and probably many people in this audience, I couldn't wait till I was over 21 to try alcohol and cigarettes and marijuana. And some of you won't be able to resist that either. But if you do, be a good scientist. Think about the drug set and setting. And think about this. Just use one drug at a time. If you're experimenting with a drug, how the hell are you going to know what it's doing to you if you've got alcohol and marijuana and everything else on board? So you do one drug at a time. Most of the real problems, in terms of the fatal problems that young people encounter with drugs, are combining alcohol with anything else. So, as I leave you today, remember this. Dr. Murphy says, one drug at a time.